And when it comes to Arizona, there seems to be a bipartisan agreement in regards to the debacle in Maricopa County. According to a new Rasmussen Report poll, Democrats think what happened in Arizona's Senate election was a major travesty. Republicans in Arizona say problems with the election in Maricopa County prevented many people from voting. When asked how likely is it that these problems affected the outcome of the Senate election in Arizona, 40% said very likely, 31% said somewhat unlikely, 10% said not very likely, and 13% said not likely at all. 6% weren't sure. Now, when those same people were asked if they agree or disagree that this debacle isn't about Republicans or Democrats, this is about our sacred right to vote, a right many voters were sadly deprived of on November 8th. 45% strongly agreed with that statement, 27% somewhat agreed, and 5% disagreed. 13% strongly disagreed, and 10% weren't sure. So joining us to break all of this down is the head pollster at Rasmussen Report, Mark Mitchell. Mark, it's good to see you. And I thought this was an important poll for you all to do. I was so glad that you did it because it shows that by and large, whether you're Republican or Democrat, you want people to get a vote and you want that vote to be accurate and that it's still sacred to most Americans. So tell us about the context here.
Absolutely. There's a lot of good things in here, and especially something very particular about Democrats. So as your viewers might know, we've sort of been one of the preeminent people polling on election integrity issues. We've asked upwards of 15,000 Americans now different questions about election fraud over the span of a couple cycles. And I could say that it appears that some Democrats in the country have created a model that really sort of works for them as long as it doesn't have accountability or there isn't scrutiny. And unfortunately for them, 94% of voters are at least somewhat closely watching news about the Senate elections. So the eye is very much on what is going on in Arizona. Now, a couple other numbers before we get started on this. 49% of voters are concerned about cheating in the midterms. That was asked right before the election. And 59% is the highest number we've ever seen of voters thinking it's likely there's cheating in an election. So now taking a look at that first question, 71% of voters say it's very likely that cheating affected the outcome of the Senate elections in Arizona. That is an absolute step change in public opinion on cheating. We've gone up, 12 points in people that think there's cheating. And keep in mind, that question also says Republicans in Arizona have said there's problems with the election. So that's independents and Democrats are agreeing, like very likely that cheating affected the Republicans there. So now looking at the party numbers, it's actually pretty bipartisan. So the total of people that at least somewhat agree, for Republicans, it's 79%. For independents, it's 68%. And for Democrats, it's 65%. So nearly 2/3 of Democrats agree that cheating likely affected Republicans in Arizona. Now, the difference is that Democrats are less likely to say very likely. Only 23% of them say very likely. But also only 20% say it's not at all likely. So, I mean, that's the most I've ever seen Democrats agree that cheating is affecting, like in a tangible way, not in some, nebulous way. It's affecting these elections. So now the other question, do you agree or disagree with that statement about election and fraud? So 72% of voters agree with that statement. And the headline here is, we didn't say it in the question, but that's a Kari Lake statement. 72% of voters agree with Kari Lake on this concept of election integrity. Once again, party numbers, absolutely fascinating. It's 78% of Republicans. What's that? 69% of Democrats, though. Now, only 35% of them strongly agree with Kari Lake, but that's still an absolute massive number. So about Democrats and about election fraud, it's like we know that looking at the signs of election fraud, that they all appear to go one way. But it isn't fair to say of Democrat voters that they like election fraud. They hate it just as much as anybody else. When we've asked the questions, it's upwards of 90% of Democrats who say, no, it's important to prevent cheating in elections. Where they differ is when you ask questions, what's more important? Is it more important to make sure everybody votes, or is it more important to prevent cheating in elections? And there, Republicans and independents absolutely say it's more important to prevent cheating in elections. They don't mind if there's a chance of a certain group of people getting disenfranchised. But Democrats, far and away, say it's more important to make sure everybody votes. And what's fascinating is people who've been disenfranchised in the past, like black voters, don't really necessarily even agree with Democrats in that case. But here is an example where Republican voters potentially were disenfranchised, and Democrats see it and agree that it's a problem. That's just fascinating and absolutely new.
And I think this is important to note. I think it's important for officials in Arizona to see this polling because, we've seen similar problems in other states, but maybe not the public sentiment around doing something about it or feeling that it was wrong. So I think in Arizona, there could be a real chance to address some of these major problems, even though officials clearly, by and large, are not doing so. We're continuing to watch that situation. And Mark, I thought this was, like I said, a great poll to do because I did keep seeing on social media some people, Democrats saying, look, I didn't vote for Kari Lake, but I don't think this is right. This is very problematic. So I think that at least is positive in a step possibly towards change. And Mark, I also would love to have seen the public opinion about a possible redo election because that was one of the ideas that were thrown out there. It's probably a little late in the game now for that, but I really appreciate this polling. This is great.
We ask questions every night, so I'll put that one on the list. So, yeah.
Oh, I love it. Great. Thank you. Good to see you, Mark.
Good to see you too.